Hi, my name is Carson Hungerford, and I am a rising senior public relations major and a sports media minor at Samford University. Today, I'm going to be discussing the current trends in sports sponsorships and partnerships. So, when you're discussing partnerships and marketing deals, one of the more important factors to focus on is the target demographics or the audience that the brand is trying to reach through a partnership. So the current new generations are Gen Z and Generation Alpha, which is the group of people born from 2010 to 2024. Some key factors about those demographics is they have shorter attention spans, so about less than 8 seconds. They prefer to identify with individuals rather than the teams, so players versus the whole team. This is very important for brands to keep in mind when they are developing a partnership, is that the group they're trying to reach is going to prefer to identify more with an individual player or athlete than the team itself. Some of the key things that are most important to these demographics are sustainability, equality, and the planet. So those are some important factors to keep in mind when developing partnerships. They dislike non-transparent advertising in partnerships, so anything that feels fake or not real. And they also grew up with technology in their hands, so they have spent their whole life consuming content on technology versus more traditional methods from the past. So currently, they are shifting away from traditional content using. They are using more streaming services and social media platforms now more than ever. They've strayed away from traditional viewing content in traditional means such as cable, live television, and they are focusing more heavily on using streaming platforms and social media platforms in order to consume this content. Platforms such as ESPN Plus and YouTube TV, where they can watch the sports that they want to watch live for a price. And then they can also consume highlights from TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter, which is how a lot of people from those two generations consume their sports content nowadays. So with new platforms come new opportunities for partnerships. Athletes and teams can now promote brands on new platforms such as TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. And then you have esports, which is video games as a sport. So recently that has developed into a large market for partnerships, with brands like Adidas partnering with esports brands such as G2 Esports. Adidas is partnering with them in a 2-year agreement that started in January of this year. They have become the apparel provider for them, and we're also responsible for designing their jerseys as well. Now, esports is a relatively newer market, as we haven't seen that within the last 5 years, but it has rapidly grown to become a pretty prominent way to find partnerships with brands. And then this has been one of the most important developments in partnerships this year, or honestly in the last decade, if you look at it. So it's NIL, which stands for name, image, and likeness. So college athletes prior to NIL being passed were not allowed to partner with brands individually, so they couldn't use their name, their image, or their likeness to earn money and partner with brands. But since that has passed, they are now able to make money using their name, image, or likeness and can accept partnerships, and this will not jeopardize their eligibility to play like it has in the past. This is good for brands because they can now form partnerships with athletes and pay them to endorse their brand or products. So a lot of brands and athletes have already utilized the passing of NIL just weeks after it was allowed, and it will continue to revolutionize the way that partnerships will work in sports, because now they can partner with individual student athletes who typically have rather large audiences rather than teams as a whole, which is important if we go back to the target demographics we discussed prior, how they like to relate to an individual rather than the whole team. So now brands have the opportunity to partner with individuals rather than the whole team. And another important factor that has really developed the way partnerships have worked in recent years is the influencer market. So influencers are social media users who have an increasingly large following on social media platforms such as Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. And this has increased opportunities for brands to form partnerships. influencers are not just limited to sports, and we've seen that in many different markets such as fashion, lifestyle, those kinds of things, but many successful athletes have collected large enough followings to be considered influencers. And these brands have plenty of motives for partnering with these influencers, such as the large following that they have. And because of the large following, these athletes have pretty good credibility because they're well known, and the audience reach that they do have through their platform that is their sport. And a lot of athletes are seen promoting products relating to health and wellness, as that is the market that they are in. So with influencers being introduced in the past couple of years, it has given brands a lot of opportunities to work differently in advertising, such as paid social media posts versus a whole advertising campaign. It gives brands the flexibility to run campaigns that are different than what they would have run in the past, such as television commercials. And then I'm going to discuss some of the more prominent athletes and their following and how they have worked with brands. So Olivia Dunne is an LSU gymnast, and she has over 4.2 million followers on TikTok to date, over 1.2 million followers on Instagram, and over 166 million likes accumulated across her TikTok videos. She is currently not partnered with any brands, but she was not able to prior to the passing of NIL because she is a student athlete. So right after NIL passed, she made it on a billboard in Times Square for her school, Louisiana State University, and has already expressed that she is very excited to work with brands in the future. We have Katie Ledecky next. She is an Olympic swimmer. She's a 5-time gold medalist. She has partnered with Reese's, an American Girl doll brand, and several other brands. She has over 511,000 Instagram followers, and she has worked with Polo Ralph Lauren as an athlete ambassador for them, Reese's, and American Girl doll, as well as many others. Next, we have Cristiano Ronaldo, who has over 320 million Instagram followers, and he has partnered with brands such as LiveScore, an app, and Clear Men, and he is one of the most followed athletes on Instagram to date. We have the partnership with Clear, which is a hair care brand that he has endorsed, and we have LiveScore, an app that helps you keep up with the scores of the games that fans are watching. And as you can see, athletes are required to say paid partnership with and list the brand when they do things like this in order to promote transparency with their audiences. Next, we have Suni Lee. She is a Team USA Olympic gymnast, and she is actually a part of the Auburn women's gymnastics team this upcoming year. So her Twitter followers, according to Sports Business Journal, rose by 291%, and her Instagram followers increased by 269% since the start of the Tokyo Olympic Games. She signed with Auburn Gymnastics in March of 2021, and according to Sports Business Journal, is expected to be one of the most marketable college athletes in the country. Her earning potential for NIL was already high before she won gold all around in Tokyo. She entered the Olympics as the Auburn athlete with the most followers, and since her win in Tokyo, her following and her earning potential through NIL has continued to skyrocket. And according to many professionals in the marketing world, she's an athlete to watch out for in terms of profitability. Next, we have Simone Biles, who is a Team USA Olympic gymnast. She has partnered with brands such as United Airlines, Nike, Visa, Capital One, and she has over 6.2 million Instagram followers to date. Here are some examples of her partnerships. On the left, we have her partnerships with United. On the right top, we have Visa and Capital One. And on the bottom right, we have her partnership with Oreo. And so she has done partnerships with many different brands. And then the Tokyo Olympics is a pretty big talking point this year specifically because new partnership opportunities are emerging through the Olympic Games. So viewership for the Tokyo Olympic Games was down in comparison to previous Olympic Games years, but there is expected to be a high amount of money profited from the Olympic Games. And a large amount of this money is brought in through partnerships and advertisements. And then COVID-19 is a pretty important factor that we can't look past. The pandemic has had a massive impact on sports and on partnerships and on live events. So it has taught a lot of brands to think digitally and think more in terms of how their consumers can get content without having to attend events in person, considering most events were canceled for about a year and they're still limiting capacity in some places. So consumers are having to view their content digitally, and so brands are having to come up with creative new ways to interact with their audiences and creative ways to partner with athletes to continue to make money and continue to bring in audiences during a time of a pandemic when everybody is at home. So a summary of how sports partnerships have changed in recent years. In recent years, with the increase of usage in platforms such as Instagram and Twitter and the introduction of platforms such as TikTok, there have been a lot of new ways for brands to partner with athletes and to get more involved with sports audiences. The two main target demographics that a lot of brands are working with now, Generation Z and Generation Alpha, grew up with technology in their hands. So a lot of these brands have to think very technically and digitally to figure out the best way to engage with those audiences, since a lot of people from those generations don't want to have access to content that they aren't using. So you have subscription platforms such as ESPN Plus and YouTube TV that are paid platforms that have become more popular to use to consume sports content than live TV. You can still watch the events live on there, but a lot of those platforms include behind the scenes looks at athletes and events, which fans from those generations have both said that they prefer to have access to. And then you have platforms such as YouTube, where several athletes will document their life in vlogs, which is video blogs. And a lot of times those vlogs will be sponsored by a brand. So they'll show them using a product from that brand or show how that brand fits into their everyday lifestyle in an effort to bring awareness to the brand, while also just making a video discussing their day-to-day life as an athlete. So YouTube has been a pretty big platform for that as well. And then you have the passing of NIL, name, image, likeness, which has given a lot of student athletes crazy opportunities to make insanely large amounts of money. For example, we have Bryce Love, the Alabama football player, who Nick Saban has has already made over 7 figures from NIL earnings. And it passed at the beginning of July 2021. So it's been a month. So with NIL passing, it gives a lot of opportunities for brands to work independently with athletes versus the entire team or the venue that these teams perform at. It gives them the opportunity to work more one-on-one with athletes, which is good considering the target demographics that they are trying to reach prefer to identify with individuals rather than the entire team. So with the introduction of all these new social media platforms and due to NIL, the Olympics, the pandemic, things are changing rapidly. COVID has taught us how to really think digitally in terms of our audiences. And so I'm excited to see how sports partnerships will continue to evolve in the next couple years as social media and our generation continues to evolve. And we get to see how NIL will play out and how the pandemic will affect sports partnerships in the future. And then here are my sources. And thank you for watching. I really enjoyed getting to speak with y'all with sports partnerships today.